Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Squared Up Coffee Break webinar. My name is Matthew Long, and this month we're talking about Windows Admin Center. I'm joined this month by Squared Up lead developer and WAC aficionado Dave Clarke.
Hi there, everyone.
And yes, I sort of let the lead in. We're going to be looking at our Windows Admin Center, where that sort of fits in your monitoring suite, and also our handy dandy Squared Up extension, which we released last year sometime, and is currently in beta. So lots to go through this month, and hopefully very interesting, exciting stuff. So I'd imagine most of you have probably heard about WAC by now, because Microsoft have been publishing this quite fairly heavily, especially launching this at Ignite. But for those of you who aren't aware, Windows Admin Center, or WAC as we'll be calling it throughout the webinar, is a locally deployed web app for managing computers and hyper-converged infrastructure, which is what Microsoft officially call it. To break that down a little bit more into English, it is essentially a modern successor to tools like Server Manager. The idea here is you can use it to see real-time performance metrics, get log event information, view services, manage roles and features, Windows Firewall, registry, PowerShell, everything. It is a single place where you can manage all this stuff. And it doesn't just manage servers, it also manages clusters, hyper-converged infrastructure, and Windows 10 PCs. So Microsoft are really building this as this is the thing you do to administer anything on the Windows platform, whether it's your desktops, whether it's your servers, failover clusters, whatever. This is quite a big play from them. And it can be used to manage machines that are on-prem, in the cloud, or in hybrid environments. Ultimately, it's managing a Windows OS. It doesn't care where that is deployed. So you can kind of use it in whatever configurations you can imagine. And it features a growing ecosystem of extensions. So the idea is, whereas previously you'd have had like the RSAT pack, so remote server administration tools, and that would have had a whole bunch of MMC snap-ins and tools within it. Well, now you have WAC as the platform, and then these extensions will bring in like Active Directory management tools or DNS management tools or whatever. Right now, that's mostly sort of a lot of third-party extensions that are doing sort of hardware management-based stuff, but we are now starting to see software configuration extensions coming in there as well, like the Squared Up one, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So that's sort of intro of what WAC does. In terms of its actual implementation, it's a locally deployed browser-based app. So it is installed on your machine. So you can use it personally, just connect to machines and make your life a bit easier. Or, and I think maybe more excitedly, you can install it in gateway mode. Gateway mode is their term for basically saying you install it on a web server, and then anyone who connects to that web server can now manage systems by using WAC. And I think that's probably maybe the stronger play there, is to go and just find a server environment. Like typically before you'd have like a jump box, would offer you to go and install all your management tools. That would be in the network segment that can talk to your servers. And then people would RDP onto that. Well, that jump box could have WAC installed on it as well. It's a relatively light footprint because it's just a web app. And then everyone can get to that from a web browser. That's kind of a neat way of using it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say it, describe it as a jump box, I guess. I mean, that's sort of one of its primary uses. Obviously, it is a web app, so you only need to sort of open port 443 or whatever you want. You don't need to open all of the sort of the management ports in your firewalls and so forth. You can just open this single port, and then as long as that can access all of the machines, then you're good to go.
Yep, so nice for like DMZ sort of scenarios, right? Like you've got a single port into the DMZ, or like conversely, you've got remote workers, so you are trying to come in. Typically you might have to go on the VPN before, so you could do file share management and PowerShell and everything, but now you can just have that single sort of secured endpoint that provides web traffic, and anyone with a browser can now log in and manage stuff, which is pretty cool. And because it just manages the OS, and maybe most importantly, no agent required. Woo. So a lot of server management tools, it's yet another damn agent in my growing list of agents I have to put everywhere. Well, this thing just uses PowerShell and WMI to manage servers. So basically it uses all the management frameworks that Microsoft have been building on since Server 2012 or even earlier, 2008 R2, to leverage and manage the thing. So that's all invisible to you. You don't need to see that. The good news is just no agent required, which is pretty much what you want to hear.
Although one sort of particularly cool feature is you can actually see all of the PowerShell scripts that are being executed behind the scenes, which is quite useful if you want to sort of going off and sort of write a particular script. So hopefully Matthew will remind me to show that later if I forget. But that's quite useful.
Yeah, if you find yourself doing the same task over and over in WAC, well, click that button, get the script, go and put it in some sort of administration tool, like Azure Runbooks, and then bam, you can automate it away. Okay, so with that, let's dig into actually using WAC. So Dave's got a demo. Log into the product and sort of walk us through it a bit.
Great. So if you haven't sort of seen it before, this is what WAC looks like. At the moment, I'm just sort of on the home page, but you can see you've got the various solutions, they call them, for sort of managing those different types of environments. If we go to Server Manager, we've got a list of different servers there. So there's personal and shared. This is one of the newer features, I think, this concept of shared connections. So previously, you'd have to go and add all the different servers sort of per user, even when it's sort of running in gateway mode. But now, say the admin or domain administrator, whoever it is, can add those shared connections, and then sort of anyone can access them. Obviously, you're still sort of logging in with your own credentials there, but it's a good way to get your set of servers into the list. If we connect, say, to this box, this is one of the web servers there. You can see on the left we've got these set of tools. So this is lots of the stuff that Microsoft ship out of the box. And like Matthew was saying, this is replacing sort of lots of the functionality you'd find in MMC or Server Manager. So for example, local users and groups. If I wanted to manage that, I could go in, add a new user, or change sort of group membership. Any of that kind of stuff, obviously, again, without having to sort of RDP to the box. So that's quite useful.
Yeah. And also, like, they're all in one place. The thing I love about this as well. Like, you often, if you're like troubleshooting an issue and triaging something, you're going to open up one snap-in, open up regedit, open up service snap-in. Maybe you have to do right-click admin or run as a different user because you're using escalation accounts. Like, that all just takes time. And if you're doing this on 3 different servers simultaneously to try and work an issue on multiple machines, you're going to get the wrong snap in and like do it on the wrong machine or something like that. So being able to just tear open a couple of tabs and have everything about this server in one place, I think is really, really cool. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, you can obviously open different servers in different tabs or whatever you want. And it's pretty sort of quick to switch between servers and tools as well. So you can sort of do it in one place as well.
Yeah. I like the file browser as well. That's kind of cool.
File browser's quite neat. So if you want to upload, I don't know, a zip file to the system or sort of edit bits and pieces, then you can do that as well. That's quite self-explanatory. The registry is another good one. So if you need to go and make some registry tweaks for a piece of software or whatever it is, you've got full access to everything you might expect in there. So that's quite cool. One particularly useful one is updates. Obviously, this isn't something that's typically managed sort of remotely normally. I don't think. So this sort of brings that into that central view. Which is quite useful.
If you're not using something like Config Manager to patch all of your servers, you typically have to go and log on to all of them manually to go and do this. The fact that you can see the updates and actually trigger and schedule them from here is actually going to be a real time saver. If you're sort of doing decentralized patching where your admins log on to and patch their servers, this is going to save them having to hit every single one of them manually, which is pretty cool. You mentioned access at one point there. I've had a question come in, someone saying what kind of permissions are required to access WAC. WAC is just impersonating you as a user, right?
Yeah, that's right. So as long as I've got sort of rights to sort of make these changes on the machine, then you should be good to go. They recently actually added, let me just jump into here, some role-based access control. So you can sort of delegate those rights a little bit further without actually having them as administrators on those local machines and so forth. If I understand that correctly. I haven't sort of looked into that too much yet, but the sort of concepts are starting to come through.
It's using PowerShell JS, so just enough administration.
Okay.
So it's leveraging to do that. So if you got it, basically WAC can ship with some profiles you can then apply, and then it can execute all of those sort of tasks because it is just PowerShell under the covers. It then uses just enough administration to basically say, oh, well, you're allowed to execute these things using the GF virtual service accounts and things. So that's quite neat. They're starting to do that. Hopefully they'll build some more in the future because right now there's a bit limited, but it'd be nice if they can add some additional ones in the future. And I've seen some user voices for allow us to add custom profiles and things like that. Which really powerful.
That makes sense. And your mention of PowerShell sort of made me remember what I said I'd show. And like I say, you can view all those scripts. So if you want to know how to, create a new local user or configure any sort of bits and pieces here, you've got that PowerShell button at the top right, so you can view all those scripts. So that's quite useful. And obviously they're offered by Microsoft, so hopefully doing the right thing and following best practices, all of that stuff. But you can use those, I guess, with confidence. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you can. I know Dave just showed on the top, but you can manage your failover clusters here as well. If you are someone who's kind of lumbered with doing failover cluster management, you'll know that the failover cluster snap-ins kind of old and long in the tooth now. It doesn't. I don't think it even supports some of the new breed of failover clusters that don't have an administration point. So the ability to do that from here, I think, looking at it, and we played around a bit in the labs, I think this is sort of their new management story for failover clusters. So if you are a failover cluster admin, it's worth looking at WAC because I think this is how you'll be managing failover clusters in the future from a graphical user perspective anyway.
Great. I think that's all for that demo, so I'll switch back to the slides.
Cool. Yep, absolutely. So that's sort of, we've shown some of the capabilities of it there. The first question that we get, and Microsoft get a lot as well, is, okay, cool, but I've got System Center. How does that compete with this, or which one should I have? And the answer is that Microsoft describes WAC as being a complement to SCOM or other monitoring systems. It's not really a replacement. And part of that is because it's a management tool used to configure your servers and to triage specific outages. So to put that into context of what I mean, when you look at SCOM's performance data that it collects is sort of on a 1 minute or 5 minute or 15-minute interval. It's not real time. So SCOM will alert you that, hey, performance is going south on this server, but then you can log into WAC and see live real-time metrics.
Yep.
So it's a tool that offers a different kind of a view on things there. So SCOM is still, or any other tool, is still the historical reporting and monitoring tool. This just sort of replaces your server manager MMC. And the way that Microsoft sort of look at this is you may use this tool to sort of implement some of SCOM's capabilities if you're, say, a small deployment or you're mostly a cloud hybrid. But as you can see from the diagram from this slide they've got, Microsoft kind of pitched this as being a combinatorial approach. Like you use inbox tools and WAC if you're maybe a small deployment. If you're working in the cloud, then we recommend using the Azure security capabilities and WAC. Or if you've got a large on-prem deployment, you can use WAC and System Center together. And they have started integrating WAC with Azure as well, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right. So they started to sort of bake in, particularly sort of around the security and management side of things. But we'll talk a little bit later about sort of more of the stuff coming there, but with Azure Monitor and all of that as well. So it's great to see, I guess, if you are sort of in a hybrid environment, you actually can use the single tool, which is WAC, to sort of monitor all of that stuff and have integration, with Azure backup and all the security and management side of things as well.
Yeah, cool. So that's sort of hopefully where it fits into the into your strategy. And we've got a quote here as well from the principal program manager for WAC.
Yeah, that's right.
Sort of again saying the same sort of thing. So for those who have a purely on-prem solution, use WAC and use complementary solutions like SCOM and people providing value like Squared Up to sort of bring together that entire story. So Microsoft also take this view as well. I guess I wanted to highlight there.
Great.
Okay, so. That's sort of what there is today. Now I thought we'd talk about sort of what's new, because you may have looked at WAC when it sort of shipped at Ignite, along with Windows Server 2019. And certainly I think Microsoft are building it into that kind of release stream, because whenever there's a new technical preview of Windows Server, there's typically also one of WAC as well. So they're building the management tools at the same time as they're building the actual thing you manage with it. The WAC team is actually very active, and they've started to release previews on a pretty frequent basis.
Yeah, so these previews are available sort of as a Windows Insider. Obviously worth pointing out that you can just register for that if you're not sort of part of TAP or anything. Yes. You can just go online and register to become an insider, and then off you go with sort of all of those previews. Yeah,
like you said, there's no sort of this isn't a closed doors beta. You just put your name forward and they immediately accept it and give you the insiders builds. So preview 18.12, which dropped in December, that had a preview mode of a dark theme for those of you who like your monitoring products black rather than white. I thought it was quite funny actually. It's in preview because you have to put a special code in, which means you have a preview in a preview. Which I thought was funny. It's got you can manage the power profile of the machine. Probably more useful for desktop management than it is for server management. But again, making that point here that they are looking at desktop management with this thing as well as server administration. If your management controller is IPMI compatible, then they'll actually discover that in WAC, and they'll have a hyperlink in the WAC portal. So if you need to go and do some hard power management on the thing, or update the BIOS or whatever else, you can do that. It's kind of neat. And they've also released 2 PowerShell modules for automating WAC itself, which I think is kind of nice to recognize that it's the management tool that you use to manage your servers. Well, let's make sure you can manage that as well. So the bulk import of connections, for example, is a pretty neat thing to do, because that's something that's quite time consuming if you didn't want to go and manually type out all your servers, and if you're using it in that gateway mode and everyone is using this thing to connect to all your different systems. And then, oops, I clicked the wrong mouse there. And then last month they dropped 1902, which had the big piece there was a quality of life improvement, which is shared connections. So prior to that, and this may have been a frustration for you if you tried this out when they released the GA and back in Ignite, every single user who logged in had to redefine connections over and over again. And nothing killed it more than having to type in a server, because now you just might as well be RDPing onto the thing. So now you can create a list of shared servers that everyone can see and can click on. Obviously, again, when you connect, it's your rights. So it's not like you're exposing anything by putting those servers in the list. But now everyone can see those. So if you've got some common platform servers that everyone needs to hit onto, or if you're deploying WAC like for a particular team, well, they can now see those connections predefined.
And what's quite useful as well is you can tag sort of the different groups of servers.
Yeah, cool.
So if you want to tag your production servers different to your staging and development, any of that kind of stuff, you can do that. Again, either through PowerShell or just sort of importing those connections through the UI. But it's quite useful, obviously, once you've got a list of sort of hundreds, thousands of servers, then to be able to tag and sort of filter on that is pretty handy.
Yeah, which app they're part of, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty cool. And also they've added an extension for software-defined networking management. So if you're managing your sort of fabric and you're doing that sort of, if you're doing that kind of thing using Hyper-V, then now you can actually manage that from WAC as well.
Mm-hmm.
So again, they're building more and more of the sort of management story here into WAC rather than into another snap-in or another toolbox somewhere else. That's pretty awesome. So this is the part where we hope we're not breaching any NDAs. So they today are going to announce the 1903 preview.
Woo!
If you're watching this webinar on YouTube, it's already out. Congratulations. You can go and get it right now. For everyone else, you wait a couple of hours for everyone to wake up. But they are launching this today to Windows Insiders. And there's actually some pretty big stuff in this here. So one of the first things they've got in there is some new management extensions. So again, like we said, they're delivering on some of the tools. So Active Directory, DNS, and DHCP all have new extensions now. The AD one is quite cool actually because it's a replacement for the Active Directory users and computers snap-in, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're used to going in there, managing users, managing groups, creating both, changing membership, that kind of stuff, you can do that all now from WAC, which is great. Again, if you're having to you can manage local users and also your AD users all from one tool. One less thing to keep opening up in the background. And the same with like DNS and DHCP, especially since their like snap-ins are getting very long in the tooth now, and saves you having to go and install RSAT all over again. If all the rest of your management tools these days are web-based, it's kind of annoying to still have these other clunky packages you have to keep installing whenever you re-image your machine. So that's taken care of for you.
Yeah, really sort of selling the story that you'll have one tool to sort of manage all of this stuff, which I think is really great.
Yep. And then that's sort of the sort of on-prem sort of thing. The other, or say on-prem, but your sort of direct OS management kind of piece. And the other big piece is some Azure Monitor integration.
Yep, so they've started to sort of integrate Azure Monitor, which makes sense, especially sort of in these hybrid scenarios. So the first point is that WAC will automatically configure the log analytics agent. So that's the agent that sort of, I guess, powers Azure Monitor and obviously all the log analytic metric reporting. So it'll automatically install that agent on your server and automatically configure it to point to the correct workspace, which is quite handy. And then through the UI, you can sort of quickly create those Azure Monitor alerts. And of course, tie in all of the notification functionality that's there as well. So if you want to trigger an email notification when something crosses a threshold, or you want to fire a webhook or even an SMS, you can do all of that as well, which is pretty cool.
Yep, but also I think it goes and lights up service maps as well.
Yeah, that's right.
It enrolls it for VM Insights and goes and sets the solution up for that too.
Yep.
So there's a whole bunch of Azure Monitor stuff, which is usually quite bitty to go and have to go and set this all up for a VM.
Yeah.
And like Dave said, now it's just like single click, wait a few minutes, there you go. It's been enrolled. And they point out in the sort of guides for Azure Monitor that you get 5 gig per customer per month free?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Which is quite a bit actually if you're not really using this to, for a lot of servers, or like you've covered most of your, say, in-domain servers with SCOM, happy with that, but you've got some stuff living in the cloud or some stuff living in the DMZ that you aren't monitoring that way. Well, now you can unroll that and that will easily fit inside your caps.
Yeah, and then you can pick and choose sort of particular metrics or sort of key metrics there, sort of to what's relevant to those applications or to those servers to sort of keep you within that threshold as well. But I think the pricing sort of overall is pretty reasonable as well.
Yep. So the cool thing here is that this is sort of the start of a journey. They're clearly going to start building more of this sort of stuff in. Yep. So I really like that. Hopefully they'll have at some point the same sort of thing. So it'll go and Dave's mentioned already. There's integrations for enrolling with Windows Update, and there's also things for Azure Backup.
Yep.
So I can just see them putting more and more stuff in here to allow you to easily and quickly configure the monitoring solutions in Azure without you having to go and manually do that and sort of manage it that way from a separate portal.
Yeah, it's worth noting you can sign into the portal sort of with your Azure AD credentials as well. So if you're using that for sort of single sign-on, then that's an option there as well.
Cool.
So yeah, Azure sort of really being tied into lots of different places.
Yeah, it's nice to see sort of a nice combinatorial approach there rather than one set of tools for everyone in the cloud and
yeah, exactly.
you on-prem guys have to sort of suck it. And then the other sort of improvements are quality of life. I say there is more to it than this, but the team don't necessarily publicize a lot of the little tweaks they make. So whenever me and Dave like log it back into WAC, it's always like, oh, I'm sure that wasn't there before. Like we mentioned a few times, like found like boxes or like options that weren't there previously. But the other sort of two big pieces are extension notifications.
Yep, so that's just a sort of little bit of functionality that means when you connect to a particular server, it will sort of detect what hardware it is, so that the vendor of the hardware, and tell you if there's a relevant extension. So that's quite useful if you're running sort of particular brands of machines or whatever it is, it'll flag that up to you. So I know that, for example, there's extensions for Fujitsu and Lenovo and those kind of stuff. So those will pop up and tell you that there's an extension available if you haven't already got that installed. So that's quite handy. And then the second one there, the add connections from AD, again, definitely a quality of life improvement. So previously you had to sort of type in each server name and it would go off and validate that. You can now sort of browse and search your wildcards across your whole domain, and it will pull those in.
Yeah, and so combined with the shared connections piece as well. That's just really
exactly.
good.
So you could quickly sort of pull a whole load of stuff if you're using, say, prod in your server names, or you want to pull out a sort of particular prefix and anything like that. You can pop a wildcard in there and add all those servers again. Shared across for everyone using the gateway.
Yeah, and again, there's a quote here from Annual Lee sort of saying that they believe that showcasing sort of the power of Azure Monitor and easing onboarding there just meets the needs of lots of customers, and then shows that cool value of sort of hybrid environments, right, where you've got the same sort of management experience regardless of where the VM is, which is where honestly we see a lot of customers today right now, which is I'm still adopting cloud, but I still have all this on-prem stuff. I need a solution that does both. Yeah,
exactly. Just making that approach and sort of that transition to the cloud, if that's something you're working on, hopefully a lot smoother.
Yeah. So as you can see, we said there's a pretty aggressive sort of schedule here. I don't know when they're going to move this forward to the next sort of GA release. I imagine it's going to be probably we'll see this when the sort of first service pack for Windows Server drops. I think they'll sort of push this stuff all and release it publicly. But since anyone can get this an insider, and since this doesn't require any agent, there's nothing to stop you getting this preview right now, trying it out, and seeing what it's like. If you don't like it, just uninstall the role and get rid of it again, because you're not having to actually modify your servers or use like insider builds of Windows Server to light any of this stuff up.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
It's definitely worth going and taking a look at. Speaking of taking a look at it, I'm going to talk about another sort of high-value piece here. I'm going to show you that off, which is our Squared Up extension. So Dave is one of our lead developers in our sort of UI and UX framework, but because he's a bit bored in his spare time, he decided to also build an extension for WAC, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure a hobby is the best description there, but no, it's definitely a fun extension to build. Really, we're trying to sort of pull, I guess, Squared Up into Windows Admin Center, so you can embed the Squared Up console that you have today within WAC, and that obviously brings about a few different opportunities. The first one is the ability to leverage that SCOM functionality. So if you want to put a server into maintenance mode or run a particular sort of diagnostic task, you've got all of that functionality. And then another key one is the performance reporting, obviously the historical basis at that point. Like Matthew was saying earlier, WAC can show you that current data. So if you're in the middle of diagnosing an issue, you can see the current data. But if you wanted to see, for example, when a particular issue started happening, you could obviously view all of that with Squared Up and go back to sort of 12 months or beyond if you're collecting that with SCOM. And then the other great sort of side of it is obviously when you're browsing WAC, you're viewing a particular server, but if you want to know its dependencies or what application is sort of it's part of, you can also view that within Squared Up as well. And then finally, as you'd expect with Squared Up, you can pull all of the data in from other tools. So whether that's incidents and tickets from ServiceNow or log data from Splunk, if you can get it into Squared Up, then you'll be able to surface that through Windows Admin Center as well.
Yeah, essentially what you get is that great single pane of glass story you've kind of always been talking about with Squared Up. On top of that, though, you also get a really nice single pane of management experience as well. So by combining all this stuff together, what you essentially wind up with is a single tool, a single console where you can see alerts from SCOM and other issues being flagged from your ITSM product. You can look at that from a sort of real-time and historical perspective. You can then use SCOM and WAC to triage and resolve that issue, and then from the same tool go and close off a ticket or sort of look at what this application's part of to see how it could have impacted other applications. So you really get this great story of, from one single place, I have all the information I need to diagnose an issue, but also all the tooling I need to also then resolve that issue as well. And when I think about we talk a lot about mean time to resolution and how you can drive that down with Squared Up. Well, identifying an issue and its causes is a big piece of that, but actually resolving the damn thing quickly is also a big piece of that too. And anything that can speed that up is a win as far as I'm concerned. So I think this is definitely, I think back to my server admin days, it's definitely a big win to be able to use a tool like this where everything is in one place and immediately at your fingertips, rather than having to go through the motions of like requesting some credentials and then going and logging in and remembering to run this command and this particular snap in and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I think it's a sort of a great mesh of managing and sort of monitoring, but I guess I'm a little biased if I built the extension.
So, well, since you're so proud of the extension, Dave, I feel like it's probably a good idea for you to show it to us.
Great.
So Dave's going to show us how you can get the extension and then also sort of some of the cool things you can do with it.
Great. So I guess it's worth mentioning quickly that the extension is available in public preview at the moment. So if you've got any particular sort of feature requests or you hit an issue, sort of, then please let us know and we'll take a look into that. But yeah, to get started, you want to go to the settings here and hit extensions, and then Windows Admin Center will show you all the extensions available. We currently have it installed already, so it's down here. But otherwise, you'll be able to hit that and then say install, and you're good to go. When you first load the extension, it will then prompt you for an unlock code. So like I say, that's part of the preview, but there'll be a URL there, so you can just pop in your name and email address, and you'll get sent an unlock code as well, and then you're good to go.
Yep.
So if I connect to that web server there.
Well, it's connecting. I should also point out you need to have Squared Up for this all to work too.
Yeah, of course.
This is an integration between Admin Center and Squared Up. So if you come across this video on YouTube, you've never heard of WAC or Squared Up before, this is one that relies on you to be licensed with Squared Up as well.
Yep.
So bear that in mind.
What's quite cool as well, when you are requesting an unlock code, if you haven't got Squared Up already, you can also get a free trial. So you can sort of get both of those at the same time, which is pretty good. So I'm just going to log into Squared Up here. Obviously, if you're using Windows Authentication or similar, you would just get logged in seamlessly. But yeah, straight away, sort of into that perspective for the web server. So I can sort of instantly see some historical data and health of sort of the resources on that machine. So like I say, this one's a IIS web server, so I can see the websites and the application pool health here. But if I wanted to look from the Windows perspective, you've got all of that data and sort of history of that data available. For example, if I drill down into the CPU graph here, I can jump back to sort of 12 months worth of data just in a couple of seconds, which is obviously great for sort of diagnosing and sort of figuring out when an issue started, like I said. If I jump back to the server here, like I say, you've also got sort of the SCOM functionality you'd expect. So if you want to put a server into maintenance mode, you can do that. So that's pretty cool. If you've come into WAC to sort of perform some maintenance or take a look at an issue, you can jump here first, put it into maintenance mode, off you go and diagnose the issue, come back and take it out of maintenance mode, which is quite a quite a cool use case, I think.
Not leaving the tool, which is what I like.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got all the sort of usual Squared Up functionality that you'd expect. So if you want to run SCOM tasks, you can do that. So I don't know, let's say display local users, just picking a random one there. That'll give me a list of sort of users on that server if I needed to sort of diagnose that. But you've got all the functionality you'd expect. So if you've got particular sort of diagnostic or even remediation tasks there, you can run those as well.
Yep, if they weren't already in WAC for you as well.
Yeah, of course.
You also got, again, like if you're looking at that sort of hybrid story, well, if you've got perspectives set up using sort of management packs to bring in data from the hypervisor you're sat on top of for this particular VM or the cloud provider in for this particular VM, you can now see that again in a single place.
Yep.
That's sort of bringing that sort of data through. And if you've got your ITSM integration set up inside Squared Up as well, well, great. Now you can see your tickets and any incidents and things that this particular server might be related to.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're pulling in data from ServiceNow or whatever your sort of ITSM tool is, you can surface those there and jump right across to ServiceNow to close the incident or to sort of get more information. Again, a sort of different tool here, but Splunk, if you wanted to look at application and security logs, you can get all of that information. Again, sort of inside WAC, which is pretty cool.
Yep, and giving you that historical context again, not just what's in the current event log, but what we've collected previously, which is kind of neat.
You might have noticed the blue bar along the top here as well, but that just lets me sort of quickly jump sort of back into the full Squared Up, shall I say, but sort of out of that embedded mode, which is quite useful. And if you're really eagle-eyed, you might have seen the view in WAC link here, which I've added as well. That's just a Squared Up action, so I'll show you how to create that. If you go into edit mode, sort of on a perspective, and hit actions, let's delete that one. Let's be brave, and say add action.
Typing test time.
Yeah, you can give it a name. So let's say view in WAC. You want to say it's a web link. What you'll want to do then is get the URL for your Windows Admin Center gateway or local server or whatever it is.
Browse to a machine when you capture that URL.
Yeah, exactly. So this at the moment is pointing at OPP Web 03. But if I delete that and insert one of these variables, so I'm going to choose the DNS name. That will then be sort of customized for whatever machine you're looking at.
Mm.
So I'll just save that and publish. And there we go, view Mac. And that should take me back right to the server in Windows Admin Center.
And likewise, you could do the same thing, have a button on like database, something that puts in the server databases on. So again, it jumps you straight to that as well.
Yep.
So there's a lot of power with Squared Up to that. And if you go back to WAC a second, Dave, Vader even works from here as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. So if you wanted to look at those dependencies, or again, for whatever sort of diagnosis you're doing, you can look at all the connections here.
Mm-hmm.
So again, in real time, that'll reach out to SCOM, go and sort of run netstat effectively on that server, take a look at those connections, and obviously with version 4 doing component level discovery as well. So if you're looking at a SQL server, it will show you the databases on that server. So hopefully, providing sort of that full context of everything you want.
That said, if you turn dark mode on, it does look a little bit interesting. But what I will say there is, we're working on that.
Soon.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to get killed now by the engineering team for saying that. So yeah, I think it's a really, really cool sort of integration here. Like I said, we've got so much monitoring data and management capability all built into one place, which is really nice. Notice that, by the way, that if you look at this, the administration of these Squared Up perspectives that you're looking at and dashboards have been disabled. So you will still need to build that stuff in Squared Up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're the kind of organization where like you're the Squared Up guy who typically builds dashboards and perspectives anyway, and then sort of provides that out as a service to people, well, you can go and author those things, and then everyone else has this as their sort of interface that they're managing things from anyway. So I don't think that's necessarily, in many cases, any particular kind of loss. It's probably the way you're working anyway right now. So that's not a particular issue. But yeah, we disabled those sort of management workflows in the window, just so it wasn't confusing having like two cogs on the screen and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can see we just got a question come in there as well, asking if we can embed WAC into Squared Up. So if you're using sort of Squared Up as your single pane of glass, unfortunately the answer right now is no. So that's a Microsoft limitation. I think they've blocked that at this time. But if you wanted to get that, then sort of please feed that back to Microsoft and ask if you can embed WAC into other platforms.
Yep.
So right now your only option is to add that sort of link or the action to the perspectives. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. I think there's an issue on user voice for exactly that, and they are very active with user voice. If you look at like the previous posts they've made about like the previews, they address like this is the top 4 requested item on user voice.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they really are prioritizing the stuff that's there. So if you vote it up, they will fix it.
Yep. So if you like Squared Up and you like WAC, go and vote for that for us. That'd be great.
Yep. Excellent. Okay, cool. I think we've probably shown off most of the stuff there. So yeah, like I said, if you've got Squared Up at the moment, go and grab that extension, go and have a play with this stuff, because I think it's really, really neat and it's definitely worth looking at. You don't have to adopt WAC globally across your organization, but if there's a particular team like the Windows Server guys who would really get a kick out of this, I think it's maybe worth giving it a shot and seeing what they think of it. And yeah, as Dave said earlier, please provide us with feedback on how you use this, what kind of features you'd like to see from WAC, Squared Up, or both, because we'd like to keep iterating on this and make sure it is really, really useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, I think with that, I'm going to wrap up the webinar. We've actually stayed on time.
Boom.
Today, which is actually pretty rare for us. So it can happen. Miracles can happen. So with that, let us know what you'd like to cover via our community Q&A platform. So if you go to community.squareup.com, we have our answers page there where thousands of users log in and post questions every week. Those are answered by sort of us, but also by our customer base who are and the SCOM community at large, who are way smarter than we are. So they've definitely got an answer to any questions you might have. And we monitor that forum as well, looking at different requests. And if someone posts like a cool solution, then we like to boost visibility and show that off to people as well. So we've had people on before based on stuff they posted on community. So please go and use that platform and make your thoughts known. If you want to sign up for future coffee break sessions and register your sort of interest to get notified when we schedule these things, go to squareup.com/coffee-break-series and you can plug in your address and get notified. So if you have a colleague or you have a friend in the industry who you think, they really like this sort of stuff, or you're watching this on YouTube and you wish you'd taken part live, then please go ahead and fill that in and make sure you join in future. The recording of this session and the slides are published via our blog, along with a wealth of other great content. So it's definitely worth checking that out if you're in the enterprise IT monitoring or administration space. I guarantee you there's something cool on there for you. And if you go onto our YouTube channel, there is a playlist that has the entire Coffee Break series on there, which now has hours and hours of great content around SCOM and enterprise monitoring and Azure and just everything in this sort of space in general. So it's definitely worth going and checking that out if this is your first webinar. Okay, with that, we're going to switch over to Q&A. If you have any questions, as always, our engineering team are online, along with myself and Dave. So we're happy to answer questions about WAC or Squared Up or anything else you have in general. If not, thank you very much for joining us this month. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see you next month, guys.